Hey everybody, it's Mr. Marshall at Stony Lane. I am coming to you today because I wanted to talk to you about something important that happens inside of longer chapter books. Okay, because sometimes what happens when we're reading books that are longer, the author, starts to write about sort of what's called abstract things, invisible things. Okay, things like life or like an issue, right? Like racism or power or um, fear, right? Like those feelings and those issues. And one way that writers sometimes do that is by using a technique that they call symbolism. Okay. And what symbolism is it takes something that's visible that you can see and they use it to sort of substitute for the invisible thing. Okay. And if you can figure out how symbolism works, then you can recognize all those cool things that the authors are putting in there that are really such an important part of reading longer chapter books. Okay. But how do you do this? Let me show you. I'm going to show you. Okay. The first thing you have to do when you're trying to figure out symbolism is to like know that it's there, right? And so one way that you can know that it's there is to be like a reading detective when you're reading. And the way that you do that is to notice that there's an object that's there a lot, okay? That the author kind of like mentions a lot in pictures or in words, okay? And so that's the first step is to notice that the object is there. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a chart that's got 3 columns to it. And the first column is to name the object. What's this thing, the object or the image that you keep on seeing? Okay. And so I just started rereading a book that I've read a bunch of times. And I started noticing an object like that. I'm rereading The Tale of Despero by Kate DiCamillo. Okay. Maybe you know this book, maybe you don't. Maybe your teachers read this to you, but it's a great book. Okay. And an object that I started noticing that keeps coming up again and again inside this book is a crown, right? Because in this book, it's about this mouse who lives in a castle. And so there's a king and there's a princess, and this mouse is in love with the princess. Isn't that funny? The mouse is in love with the princess, and the king hates the mouse because what happened was the queen, she died. And the way that she died was a long time ago, she was eating dinner, she was eating soup, and this rat like crawled up on the ceiling and then it like fell into her soup. And and then that scared the queen so much that she had a heart attack and died. So sad, right? But and so anyway, there's a king and his daughter and this mouse that live in the castle. The mouse is in love. He's in love with the princess. And and so you can just imagine how this is going to go, right? Anyway, so let's get back to the crown, right? So one thing that I noticed was that the crown keeps coming up. Like the author kind of always says the king adjusted his crown and like the king did this with the crown and that with the crown. And so like she mentions the crown a lot. So it's making me wonder what that means. So the second column, because I told you there would be 3 columns in this chart, is to think about what does it look like, or what does it what does it do? Okay, that's the second column. That's the second thing that we're going to think about. And so what you can do is you can write long about that, or you can talk long about that. Okay. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to think, well, what does a crown look like? Um, a crown looks kind of like that. That's just a quick sketch of a crown. And a crown is shiny. It's made of gold. It's got like jewels, right? A crown is heavy, like if you had to wear a crown on your head, it can be uncomfortable, right? What does a crown do? What's the purpose of having a crown? The purpose of having a crown is, well, if you're the king or the queen, that's your way of showing everyone, hey, I'm the king or I'm the queen. You need to listen to me because I'm the boss, right? And so I think so it shows everyone who is the boss, who is the king or the queen. And so that means that that's like the place where kind of all their power is, right? So it gives the king or the queen power, right? But not just like power to choose something. It's like real big power over everyone. Like they are like, if you're the king or the queen, you are like the boss of everybody in the whole land. And so like there's no greater power than that, right? For a person. And so I'm thinking, yeah, this crown could be a symbol of power, right? This crown could be a symbol of being the boss. That's an invisible thing. And the crown is a visible thing, right? Do you see that? You can see a crown, you can touch a crown, you know that it's there. You don't always see power because it doesn't look like anything. So, okay. So now the third part of my chart, the third part of my thinking is to reread and see how the invisible thing, the invisible, uh, the invisible thing works in the story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reread some of the parts where I see the crown, and I'm going to try and think about power. Okay, I'm substituting the crown with power. Ready? So here on page 29, there's a part where he's kind of like having a good time, the king, and the princess is there, and the mouse is there, Despero is there, and he's like, the king is having such a good time because he's hearing some really pretty music, and so he doesn't even realize that, hey, there's a mouse right there. He's just having a good time. So it says, he thinks that the mouse is a bug. He's playing the music. The king is playing the music. So let's see. As for Despero, he was beginning to realize that he made a very grave error because he was hanging out with the king, right? And then the princess said, look, he's so afraid. He's shaking. I think he was listening to the music. Play something else, Papa. A king play music for a bug? King Philip wrinkled his forehead. Is that proper, do you think? Wouldn't that make this into some kind of topsy-turvy, wrong-headed world if a king played music for a bug? Papa, I told you he's a mouse. Please. Oh, well, if it will make you happy, I, the king, will play for a bug. A mouse. The king adjusted his heavy gold crown. He adjusted his power. He started thinking about his power. He cleared his throat, and he strummed the guitar to sing a song about stardust. Despero forgot all his fear. He only wanted to hear the music. So he was kind of letting go of his power a little bit right there, wasn't he? Let's keep going. A little bit later, page 39. Now he's realized that it's a mouse, right? And now he's getting into a big argument. He's getting into a big argument with his daughter. It says the Princess P was holding Despero in her hand, and he was loving it. But then the king realized what was going on. Papa, the P said when the music was over, I'm going to keep this mouse. We are going to be great friends. The king looked at Despero, cupped in his daughter's hands. He narrowed his eyes. A mouse. A rodent. What? Said the pea. Put it down, the king commanded. No, said the pea, who was a person not at all used to being told what to do. I mean, why should I? Because I told you to. But why? Because it's a mouse. I know, I'm the one who told you he was a mouse. I wasn't thinking of your mother, the queen. My mother, the pea said sadly. My Sir Rodent, said the king. He adjusted his crown. Oh, now he's adjusting his power again. Now he's getting his power back. He's kind of like putting his foot down, right? He's like saying, you can't do this. You have to listen to me because I'm the king. I have the power. They're related to rats. And you know how we feel about rats. You know of our own dark history with rats. So now he's starting to think, and like he goes on, and the rest of the chapter is him like trying to scare Despero to get out of there, or he was going to kill him. So I think every time that Kate DiCamillo is talking about the crown, the king is like trying to do something with his power, right? He's trying to scare them, or he's trying to kind of take some of his power back and like relax a little bit. Do you see how I'm doing that? Do you see how I'm thinking about power by thinking about the crown? That's something called thinking about symbolism. Okay? It's when we're noticing that there's something visible inside the story that really means something invisible that we can now think about. And if you think about those invisible things in longer chapter books, it makes you understand the theme so much better. It makes you understand what the story is really all about so much better. Okay? So think about that. If you're reading longer chapter books, or even if you're reading a really rich picture book, you might notice that there's an object that comes up again and again. You can think about what this object looks like or what it does, write or talk long about that, and then reread and think, what is that invisible thing doing in my book right now? How is it helping me think about my book? Okay, why don't you try that? It'll open up a whole bunch of new secret messages inside the book. Okay, try that. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next time.